Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. We are DebateSensei, arranging ourselves in order like we normally do. We got Matt Shapiro, Esquire.
Hello.
Tim Seavey from San Diego State University, as well as everything. All right, I am a professor and a coach.
Lizard person.
Yeah. All right.
In his free time.
Yeah. And we are we're going to be talking about IPDA topics at the very recent tournament in San Diego State University.
The Gaske Memorial.
Yes.
Just a real garbage tournament, I heard. Just top to bottom. Yeah. Especially the people that were tabbing it. Ugh.
So
no, that was a good solid tournament. We had 25 NPDA teams, including I believe the top, I think 5 or 6 of the top 8 in the country were there. So it was a competitive NPDA tournament, and we were able to go all the way through octos, quarters, semis, finals. So it was a good,
good
solid tournament.
It's really good.
Well, thank you to all the tournament administrators and the facility staff who put that on, because thank goodness for debate tournaments.
All right, so we thought we'd do something a little bit different for the topic selection, where we'd actually do some striking. So I put all the topics in the banners. So Tim, you can even, like, when it's your turn to bring those up, you can. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here is what we're going to do a coin flip, where the result of that coin flip determines what side,
who lives and who dies.
What side me and Tim are on. Matt's going to be part of the conversation, but we're just going to kind of like do this as a little illustration. So how about this? Here we go. So this is the US Mint coin flip app. I thought it's funny especially considering some of the topics.
It's rigged.
Yeah. So how about this, Tim? Heads, your aff. Tails, your neg.
Sounds great.
Okay, here we go.
Do it. Whoa! It's a wheat sound.
All right. Your head, so that means your aff. That makes me neg. All right?
All right. So IPDA rules, you get to strike first.
Okay. So my first strike is going to be, let me rearrange. The proof is in the pudding.
Yep, I hated that one too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the main reason on neg would be that it's too unpredictable. I don't know, because I think that the affirmative gets to have a lot of leeway in defining terms like this. Now, the best I could come up with is that this is a common phrase that basically says that you don't need to defend yourself verbally, that your work should speak for itself. But that's about it. You know what I mean?
It almost reminds me of like the ends justify the means or something like that.
Not quite. Kind of. Yeah.
Not the same, but I mean, just the results is what matters, not the process, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. I see where you're going with that now. Yeah. And it's the proof is in the pudding. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but other than that, I would try to put together on neg. I'd try to put together some arguments that things aren't self-evident. You have to sort of market yourself, defend yourself. Nothing is, goes without saying that So I'd be developing, arguments to make sure that you could do that.
I like to think of like a budding author who also makes large vats of pudding, and then he loses his initial copy, which is often called a proof, and it's in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding.
So it's like
I
the
vote
worst
for that
excuse.
World.
Yeah.
There's a meaningless debate for everyone.
If I were forced to debate that and I were on the affirmative side, I would just go for rhetoric is noise, and we should listen to stats and facts. So I would probably just have to draw a bunch of parallels of like people want to, gin up a situation or make arguments about something when there exists facts, when there is pudding on the table. Stop talking about it. Just experience the thing, and the experience will give greater evidence than discussion around it. But I feel like that would end up being like a fairly nebulous kind of round. And I just don't love metaphors generally, so I would strike the metaphor.
The neg could kind of, the neg almost has ground where it's like life is a journey. It's the destination it's the journey, not the destination. Like
somewhat, but I think the way Tim interpreted it is kind of similar to the way I interpreted it, and so surprisingly, there might be more clash than I would be expecting from like just the topic alone without any context or anything like that. So that's nice to know. Yeah.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding.
All right.
No. I would strike, even though I really want to debate this one, like I would have fun with it. I would strike the Earth is doomed.
Oh.
Yeah. So that would be the fact round. And there's so many directions that this could go. My favorite, and I feel like it becomes a little bit too easy on the affirmative side. And I know that I'm affirmative, so I should be picking something like that. But I feel like it becomes a little bit lopsided, where it would seem like I'm just kind of bullying the negative side by picking this one, because like I can pick any given time frame and any given event that dooms the Earth, and like sweet. Like, because what does that force the negative to argue? That like the Earth will live forever?
Well, no, hold on. I was thinking you could talk about how it says the Earth is doomed. So even if someone said like global warming, humans would be doomed. The animals,
the planet's not going anywhere.
Like the Earth will not be doomed. The Earth will probably like heal itself and make an even smarter human or something. I don't know. Like,
cockroach people.
The neg has a lot of ground, because anything that if someone tries to kind of nail you down to anything that's bad for humans is bad for the Earth, that's not. I mean, I guess it's true, but it's not true. The Earth is. We would all be dead, and the Earth would still be here, not doomed.
Yeah.
And so, an asteroid that destroys the Earth or something, that would be, I guess, doomed. But
so, I mean, I would definitely prepare for that. Like that, like that's my first response. It would be like the anthropocentric sort of. It would just be an anthro critique. It would be probably my biggest position that I'm hoping to use against you. But like the whole eventually it's going to be swallowed up by the sun argument.
There you go.
I'd have to, I have to prepare for something like that, and I might go for like the clowning you argument. like that's such a boring way to interpret. Like, okay, like everything has a cycle. Like, I don't think that's what this means. I think this means that the Earth isn't going to live up until that point. That you need to prove that it's going to die before then. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what the real debate, like, honestly, I think that's what the real debate should be about. You know what I mean? Not like this.
Are we going to make it to our guaranteed expiration?
Like engulf the Earth. But up until then, is it doomed?
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, I think that argument, I think, just ends up becoming a little silly. Maybe good for drinking buddies, but not great for a debate round, in my opinion. So that's the one I would strike. All right, so your turn.
Yeah.
So we've struck proofs in the pudding and the Earth is doomed. Unsurprisingly, we've struck the metaphor and the fact. So we've got two policies and a value left.
Yeah.
Kinky.
Okay. So I have it written down. Now I'm second guessing the order that, like, give me a second here. Should, you know what? I think I'm going to do this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the neg, because I don't want to go against like discontinue the petty.
There are so many good arguments for why we shouldn't have coins.
Yeah, I know.
That's why that's my number one for affirmative, but I was pretty positive we weren't going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, because you can just do because you can still just do let's stop printing pennies, stop minting pennies. It's topical. It's absolutely topical.
But then, would you run through those machines at those train museums? Press the penny and you just destroy it into a beautiful piece of art, which somehow is
everyone
illegal. But
carries around slugs. Just steal slugs, and if they want to flatten something, that's what they flatten. But I think just coins are ridiculous. Coins are not I think you can make arguments only for quarters still have some actual utility in everyday life. But other than that,
arcade
when
games.
was the last time you used a dime to pay for something?
today.
Or a nickel that costs more than a nickel to produce. So like I think you would end up having some interesting debates around like what like this currency we've all decided currently has a value, but then if we stop making it, it now becomes rarer. So like you could assume that the value goes up, if nothing else than just to collectors. So then it would like maybe do some weird things with inflation, maybe. So I think you could have some interesting debates on the negative side, but I don't think there's a ton of ground there.
I think the ground is like a apocalyptic debate scenario. Like, you know, we're so fortunate at this cutting edge technology time in our lives, in the earth and the human experience, you know, like we're all like, oh, you don't need coins. But like for 10,000 years, there was coins. There was a method. So the day, you know, Fight Club happens and they blow up all the credit unions or whatever, like we would want coins again because you could hold it and say this is worth something. And so the tangibility, and they definitely last longer than paper money, right? Paper
also
money
true.
is
true.
More expendable, I guess. I mean, it goes. It's ironic how the paper is, you know, is the big bills and the metal.
I mean, like, the thing about not minting anymore doesn't mean we're not using them anymore. We're just not minting them anymore. You know what I mean? Like they're still out there.
What does minting mean?
Minting means that you don't like strike them.
Well,
you don't
figure they're like it's only a finite, like it's only a shrinking volume of them though, because like every year currency goes out of circulation. So that's where you would assume that like we're just going to have fewer and fewer. So maybe so long as you can make
my
the
laundry
argument
room,
that, like,
by the way,
it takes really they're all in dryers and couch cushions. Like you could make the argument that like okay, it takes so long for coins to go out of circulation versus like bills. Like paper bills have to, you know, they're deteriorated after a much shorter life, like Matt points out. So you could say like by the time that we're entirely out of coins, like we'll be so far beyond the need for them. So maybe like that's still. Yeah, so I think there's good arguments to make on the AF. I don't think there's as great of arguments in the neg.
I'm sure there's a bunch of like poverty arguments you can make, by the way. That's like people don't have access to plastic card money and they need coins to eat. So you should make sure that the, you know, people who need coins have their
but
coins.
that's where the whole like you're just not minting them anymore. You're not like banning their use.
But by not minting them, they will be more, you know, they will be disproportionately affected.
It's just the timeline. You know what I mean? It's like they'll be out of circulation over a fairly long period of time. So
and what will happen to homeless people who depend on finding change for food?
Like it's still going to be circulating around though.
But after the decades are over, I'm asking a question.
They ask their nearest robot.
The final
solution. I don't know. Like you can make the argument, hopefully, that we've made significant strides to solve homelessness in the next 50, 60 years.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and if the argument is we need to keep these coins because homeless people need to maintain their posh lifestyle, like I don't know if that's going to be too.
It's true. It's kind of a
you heard it here, people.
Issue that you're solving there. You're not doing a killer job with that solvency.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I love rephrasing people's arguments that way. Well,
and like children, like the tooth fairy gives you like 2 quarters. You need quarters.
Oh yeah, that's true, man. The tooth fairy economy is just going to be flipped on its head.
Right.
Oh man,
now, I just rapid inflation in the tooth fairy.
Stop lying. Let's stop lying to our children. How about that?
No, I think we should make up new fairies. You know, it turns out there's been a fairy war. Okay, so I have 2 topics remaining, and I think one is very dry but meaty.
The other one's really wet.
Just so much fun to debate.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and strike the one that I think the affirmative side would win more easily, just because it's not as fun. I'm gonna strike the U.S. should use 24-hour time.
Okay.
So I think that this argument is like similar to the coins one. I think there's just some stacked positions on the affirmative. Like the negative side gets to be like, yeah, but people wouldn't know and it'd be difficult adjustment. And that's as far as it goes. There is no advantage to us saying AM and PM on things, but we just like, that's the way it is. It's kind of like we're using, you know, the standard system instead of metric. Like it feels very much the same. Like every other country is completely okay with this. And our own military uses it just like scientists use the metric system. Like 24-hour makes more sense, but we're just like, we like saying AM and PM and we're America. So we do things different. 12 inches is a foot.
Hell yeah, it is. What about analog watches? There's your AF. Okay. Do you like analog watches? I have never seen a 24-hour clock analog style, but you need a 12-hour format for analog watches to exist, and they're classy and nice, and they feel good.
I mean,
and they make a jang sound when they like this.
That's funny. It's just saying the U.S. federal government should use it, not that everybody should. It's like on the way I read this is like
no, that's like a vaccine mandate. That's a 24-hour time mandate.
So you're gonna have like riots of like.
They're taking your assault rifles, and you have to use 24-hour time.
12 hours in a day, AM, PM, or die. Like I just think those riots would be hilarious.
What does AM and PM stand for?
Anti-meridian and post-meridian.
Wow.
Meridian, of course, means taco time, which is noon, as everyone knows.
There's a prime meridian,
on Tim.
The central longitudinal line going through some country in a city in that country, Greenwich or something, Greenwich.
That's the international date line. No, you're right. That is the prime meridian, huh? And yes, Greenwich. Well, that's just because the British, like they got to make the rules, so they decided on stuff like this. But so 24-hour time, I think that would be it would be dry. It would be a boring topic to debate. But I do think the affirmative side would win.
Yeah, I do think that like there is a bit of a drawback to being the negative on this one. This is one of those ones where I'd be really talking up the importance of solvency. Like debate isn't about like. So I would really get kind of meta on this one. You know what I mean? I'd be like, what is good for debate? Is it good to just propose plans that have zero disadvantages? Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, are we just like, is the whole point that we just propose things that we can do as long as it doesn't do anything bad? Or are we supposed to be talking about stuff that we can do that makes things better? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I would say, like, is it really that confusing that there's going to be, like, do you have any example where the 12-hour format led to some sort of
nuclear war?
Yeah, some sort of harm. Like, and so I'd be doing a big talk on burdens and like what
big talk.
Yeah. Or like calling out the harm. It's like, what is the problem?
Huh?
What's the problem?
Yeah, because I love the phrase that like you're proposing a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm like, what good is that? You know what I mean? Why are we practicing this in debate? And so, yeah.
It's specifically solves problems for early risers. When people say, I'll meet you at 7, only early risers hear AM. That's the only time. And raging alcoholics, like, I'll meet you at the bar at 7. They're like, all right, it's a little early, but I guess we're doing it. So I guess it solves problems for them, and someone's got to look out for them.
Yeah, I wonder, I'd also look up if there's anything other than 12 or 24-hour time. That would be fascinating to find.
There's Men in Black. He's like, is a 36-hour lunar schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you'll either get used to it or you'll have a complete mental collapse. Either way. That's a great movie.
Huh, yeah.
So you're right. That was a. I've honestly been holding that in my back pocket. So I got to write the IPDA topics, and I've like wanted that. I wanted the coins one and that to come up for a good while. Like I tried to theme the rounds of just like, this is simple things that we should be talking about. So it was gonna be either this or switch to the metric system. But I think metric maybe has a little bit better debate meat to it.
Oh, here we go. Oh, hey, that would work.
Oh, you're right, Nolan. I did the same thing.
I have done that before.
Alarm clock settings. Drama.
Alarm settings. Now, okay.
Thank you, Nolan.
Yeah, I might. Okay, that argument, I might be doing like topicality. I'm like, we're not.
You're not the U.S. federal government.
Yeah, we're not the federal government. Like, it's like, sure, you should.
My alarm clock doesn't work.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm telling you, banish 12-hour time.
The USFG should make sure that the president is getting up on time. So actually, he solves.
Oh, wow. Nice.
The president hasn't touched their own alarm clock in 1,000 years.
Do they have a butler that just comes in and tickles them awake? Like, I don't know how that
Only
functions.
If they want it.
Are our tax dollars going to a professional tickler?
I think JFK did.
Fluffers?
Yeah.
That's a different profession that someone can Google free time. So, all right. Well, that means, so based on our strikes, what is our topic that we're debating?
There we go.
Woo! I love this topic.
A
Okay,
police
man.
state is better than anarchy.
All right,
Okay.
you're the affirmative. You're the
Yeah.
affirmative.
All right,
Me?
so I am
No.
all in on Singapore.
Okay.
I would contend that Singapore classifies as a police state. It is a one-party system. It is like everything is extremely monitored. They have, the like Interpol systems, like everything's on CCTV, everything is tracked. Like people really don't have a whole lot of privacy, and everyone is super happy and well educated, and they're totally accepting, and like crime is ridiculously low, and like there are so many wonderful parts. I'm sure that
you sound like Kim Jong Il,
bad
dude.
things, but for the most part,
And
I would
everything
say,
is
like,
good.
Singapore is the ideal, like if authoritarians created like their dream world,
It's
it would be
Plato.
Singapore.
It's Plato's ideal world.
Like it's a one-party systems ideal world, because like there are plenty of examples of one-party systems that are awful, that are just really, really terrible places to live. But Singapore, meanwhile, has done some very clever things socially and economically that make life really. What's that?
What? Oh, sorry. Finish your
Yeah,
point,
that have just made life really good. So I would contend that a police state is one where individuals like citizens really have little to no privacy, and breaking the law has tremendous consequences, and so they are very policed. That's what I would say, and that is the case in Singapore. Like the fine for like spitting gum on the sidewalk is like
I've heard this
thousands of dollars.
myth when
That's
I
a
was
famous
6
one.
years old.
But if you have like an ounce of weed in Singapore, it's like 5 years prison.
That's better than Oklahoma. I'm just kidding.
Probably.
Sure. Used to be like
So they have ridiculously strict drug laws, yet they have like very like brothels are legal. They like bars are like very like they've got all of the things that are available in most like Western countries. Even things that are like kind of frowned upon in Western countries, like it's all open. And they have like on the same street, they will have like a mosque and a synagogue and a church and a temple. And like it's an extremely religiously tolerant place. Like they've picked a lot of the things that countries like bicker about, and they're like, nope, we're good on all fronts. But then they've drawn the line in the sand really strictly. Like these are the things we absolutely will not tolerate, and those things are very highly punishable. So I would go all in on Singapore.
Okay, so that sounds like I would like reciprocally be justified in looking at the most favorable example of anarchy.
So like Portland?
I guess so.
What was the little autonomous place that was in? I thought it was Portland, like near Portland. I think Seattle did something similar where like they took the defund the police idea very, very far, and they were like, all right, we are now an autonomous collective of people. And the news had a whole bunch of things like, oh, it's anarchy, oh, it's riots. And then like talking to friends and people that were there that like spent a ton of time in it, they're like, nah, this is awesome. This is like what people wish the US were more like. So like boots on the ground, people really enjoyed it. There was really not bad stuff going on. It was a pretty cool environment.
No, I'm not sure. I'm unfamiliar with that, but I mean, I'm like looking up examples of anarchist societies, and like Copenhagen had a nice example called Freetown that lasted for 50 years. And
oh wow,
yeah, you know what I mean. And it and so I think there's a lot of contrast to do it. Like I probably asked you some questions like how does Singapore treat like homosexuality? I don't know. Is there any...
I'm pretty sure they're completely chill. Like I don't think they have. I think their social
they cut your hands off.
Extremely. they're extremely strict on things like drug use, or like I mean I think any crime
littering
holds a much littering obviously. Like I'm pretty sure all crimes in the U.S. are like similar crimes there, but they just hold way greater weight.
Yeah.
And so I think you have lots of arguments of like, okay, not everyone's going to live perfectly inside the rule of law, but then you can tend on the other side, like just about every defense to people breaking the law in the US is like, well, their environment caused them to have all these problems, and that's what led to this, unfavorable circumstance. And Singapore has done a really, really good job of solving those kinds of things. Like they have zero homelessness. Like it is illegal to be homeless in Singapore, but they also have a ridiculous number of like housing programs and like everything to, ensure that that doesn't happen. Yeah. So it's like it I'm sure is way more polished in the image that they present, but some of the things that I've heard about it, like even the people that live there, seem pretty stoked about it. They just like very clearly acknowledge like don't do any of these things.
So I mean, while you're talking, I don't know. I just looked up LGBT rights in Singapore, and
is it bad?
Yeah,
and there was not a single page on the internet.
Yeah, same-sex sexual activity between males is illegal. Lesbians, that's just hot.
You heard it here, folks.
You heard it here first.
Even if it's consensual and takes place in private, the Attorney General of Singapore has declared that prosecutions under Section 377A occasionally still occur. Wow. This is Wikipedia for whatever that's worth.
Okay, well that's pretty rough then. So I mean, of course, throwing up like here's the prime example, then either of us get to tear it down, I think is not like the best way of debating, but I think I really enjoy this topic because I think if you go theoretical or practical, you end up with like some interesting meat on either side. Like, yeah, I mean, so you can obviously go like, oh well, you know, Iran versus Burning Man or something like that. Like, I would rather live at Burning Man than live in Iran or something.
Now, I really like how you can play with the criteria, because what we naturally did in this was we took the best example versus the best example. You can also do the worst example versus the worst example. I think that's fascinating because it kind of leads to, it's kind of like, okay, let's talk worst case scenario under police.
Like Woodstock is the worst police state of all. And and Singapore is the antithesis of anarchy.
Yeah, I think you'd probably go with like North Korea as a police state. So I'd be like, all right, what is life like in North Korea versus
I wanted to
I don't know,
chime
like
in.
Syria right now. Maybe you could contend like Syria's anarchy, like no laws are being enforced or something.
I think
like, maybe that's excessive.
Had a functional government. I don't know if that's. I might be out of date. But I know that was the example we went to for a while, that there was no real functioning government in Ethiopia, and so if you compare is North Korea better or worse than Ethiopia? Is a freaking is a weird discussion, man.
I was gonna just chime in and say, you know, with the term police state, okay, that in my mind, like even I would argue what you described him in Singapore as, I'd argue maybe that's not a police state. Like that's just a state that has some pretty strict rules. I mean, the United States, the you know, it's probably a good example of a police state. I mean, in a lot of the media and the way it's being kind of portrayed these days, you know, militarized, you know, aggressive tactics, almost like a soldier, and you know, those could be things that are kind of the term. I don't even think police want to live in a police state. You know what I mean? Like it's a negative connotation. Mm-hmm. Anarchy, by the way, on the flip side of that, is kind of like a idealistic thing that I don't think has ever really come to fruition. Jared brought up Freetown.
Yeah.
But, you know, anarchy is supposed to be like a system of government, which is no government. And everyone just gets along and, you know, and
I mean, I suppose you could maybe start to argue like,
well, hold on. Before you move, like, I just wanted to say the way you were talking about it earlier is kind of like anarchy is just by itself a negative thing, which I mean, practically speaking, I know what you mean. Like practically, when we say anarchy, it means there's no order, and so everyone's running amok. That's not necessarily what anarchy is supposed to mean. Now, I agree that practically speaking, we have to talk about how it exists in reality. I just want to again point out, police state, it almost requires a negative connotation where I don't necessarily think anarchy has to, but in our language, it does.
So I think you can start with like just some philosophical examples of like, okay, so like Hobbes' state of nature is supposed to be the description of anarchy, right? Of like there exists no laws, every person is out for themselves.
Right.
So like when setting up a social contract,
but they like take care of each other,
so that things don't become the state of nature, anarchy, you know, whatever. I think you can paint that there exists some like pretty solid upsides, but also some pretty gnarly downsides. And maybe it's just because we are creatures that have, you know, become a successful species because of our agreement to this social contract, you know, even from like very first tribes up until now, like we like to have rules because we feel safer with it. I think I would just start tapping into that of like, maybe I would go so far as to say like, it's impossible to have anarchy, but then also go to the opposite side and be like, a police state can be pretty great. I know that I sound like a sales pitch for a dictatorship. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Come check it out. We have #1 great time evening. Don't fit in the street, or the KGB will pick you up. But so there totally exists, like,
and don't be gay.
As you say, like, police state can be a horrible thing. But I think that I could come up with a few examples of police states that weren't as bad as the picture painted of anarchy, where it's like fear is the only, thing that's for dinner.
Well, like, I mean, there's a lot of examples of anarchy where that aren't just painted pictures, though. You know what I mean? That like they actually existed and you could point to them. But if we went more theoretical, it's kind of like, all right, what is the core philosophy of a police state versus a core philosophy of anarchy? I might be pointing to like Noam Chomsky and anarcho-syndicalism, you know what I mean? Where like there's a lot of versions of anarchy, you know what I mean? It's like you could do anarcho-capitalism, you could do anarcho-communism, you could do anarcho-feminism, you know what I mean? It's like, and so all the variety that you got, I might, at the very least, try to look really smart by pointing out all the different versions. You know what I mean?
You sound really smart.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but
iambic pentameter.
Just pointing out that like there's a lot more options out there than just like, oh, it's like The Purge. No, like that's not the only version of anarchy. You know what I mean? It's like that's just what Hollywood sort of represents it as.
I do imagine you could probably also make some pretty like solid critique points to the subject of like the side that paints anarchy as just nothing but bloodshed and murder are the perpetrators of bloodshed and murder. Like we have these history books that talk about like the settling of the American West, where it was just like, colonization at its absolute worst. Like I think many people would maybe paint that as a form of anarchy, of like, there were no laws, there were no rules. The Wild West, people did what, as they pleased. But that narrative only comes from the side of like colonizers. And you could say like there's lots and lots of histories of anarchies that were not horribly violent. It just happens to be the horribly violent ones that bring it up. It's like nuclearism, right? Of like people that like are obsessed about nuclear war are the only ones that are likely to actually push the button because that's all they think about. So it's more of like a reflection back on the debater if you're against it.
Yeah. I mean, because I would definitely be painting you as a fascist, basically. Like, this is
Tim is literally propaganda. A fascist.
The only reason they're saying that anarchy's bad is because they want to take your freedom away.
He just bought 37 acres in Guyana, and he's taking you all with him, okay?
And I would be telling you why, like, the dinner menu under, like, a police state is fantastic. Wine pairings are exquisite. Just don't disagree with anything.
Say what you will about a police state. Try the steak.
All right. Hey, everyone. That's our time. All right. We'll come back next week on Wednesday discussing more debate-related topic. We are Matt, Tim, and Jared, DebateSensei, coming back at you. See you later.